Good morning. Thank you for joining me, Sangha, and my fantastic co-host, Morton. And we have our new guest today, and she is Emma Harding from Pocket Carer. So lovely to have you here, Emma.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. I was so pleased to get to know you a bit yesterday in the Dragon's Den organised by the IHSCM, where I got to know more about Pocket Care, and obviously because I'd seen you on various social media, I've been following just a bit, but only sneak previews of what you're doing. So it's fantastic to have you here today. Can you tell us just a bit more about you? Who are you?
Well, my name's Emma Harding and I'm the CEO and founder of Pocket Carer. My background is I've worked in healthcare services for coming up to 20 years now. 5 years ago, I made the decision to go out on my own as a self-employed carer, which was bit scary at the time, but 5 years later, really enjoying doing that. And about 2.5 years ago, I was still using, paper files and things for my clients. Obviously being self-employed, I still wanted to have the same professionalism as care companies. So I was still doing the same things of creating client files, care plans, risk assessments. And I started looking at what software was available to domiciliary care companies, care homes, trying to find out if that was accessible to me as an individual. Unfortunately, it wasn't really. So that led on to me looking at what if I could have the perfect app for my business, what would it be? And started putting together all these lists, and then I managed to find someone to help me build it.
Wow.
So that led to the creation of Pocket Carer, an all-in-one business management app for self-employed carers that manages all your clients, but also business tools. Like for me, that was important, like income and expenditures, tracking, invoicing to clients, contract templates, everything really that you need all in one place rather than using multiple different apps, paper-based for this. And so that's a little bit about me.
That's a lot about you, and thank you for sharing that. I really like Pocket Carer as an idea and a concept, and I'm actually quite sure that if you get it right, it's going to be amazing with the amounts of self-employed carers that are out there, and with all the difficulties. I guess you did not become a self-employed carer because you wanted to keep track of a lot of administration. You did it because you have something else in your heart, and I think what you're trying to do is quintessential in succeeding in that role. But just before we go into Pocket Care and understand more about the system and the success so far and all of that, I'd really like to know a bit more about what you were doing and what type of people you were engaging with when you started as a self-employed carer.
So to be honest, when I first went out 5 years ago, it was on a bit of a whim, really. If you like, I'd been working for care services via agencies, and I was just getting to the point where I wanted to have a bit more control over my own work, who I worked with, what hours I worked, and also what pay as well. That it was a combination of all these factors. And at the time, I had my DBS was on the update service, my training was all up to date. I looked into insurance, and it was reasonable. So I just put a small ad out on the platform, and the next day I had 10 people get in contact looking for a private carer. So within 5 days of that message going up, I was off on, I had my first clients in place. Personally, me, I do a lot of live-in care. So I work with, and it can be from anything from a week up to sort of 12 weeks, depending on the client and what their needs are. I've worked with a variety of people over the years, from younger people with physical disabilities that get direct payments to self-funders, elderly, people that don't want to go, that want to remain at home. They, they don't want to go into residential care, and they want, the main thing with all the people I work with, they want control of who's providing their care, really. So rather than going down the managed care route of working with companies, they prefer to get the self-employed care in, who they're picking, they're interviewing, and that they've got full control over who's coming into their properties, who's going to be looking after them, if you like.
And are you seeing there has been a bit of change with regards to younger people, entering the sector? And how are they finding from your experience? Is it, care needs a different kind of mindset, a different kind of skill, right? Which you have to have that mindset to bring that care, that love to the people whom you are, caring for. Are you seeing there is changes happening with regards to demographics as well?
You definitely. I mean, 5 years ago, when I was, especially looking at the live-in side, where a lot of self-employed carers are, 5 years ago, the majority of living carers and self-employed living carers were came from Eastern Europe, and a lot from South Africa on ancestral visas and so on. But over the last 5 years, especially things like Brexit, there's been a huge change, and there's a lot more now British carers going into self-employment, into living care particularly. And I think I mentioned yesterday at the Dragon's Den event, 5 years ago, there was no support services. It was just me on a bit of a whim, putting myself out there. Whereas over the last 2 to 3 years, there's so many services now setting up, from booking platforms, care matching platforms, support services to help carers transition from employment into self-employment, because that demand, the demand is growing, but also carers themselves are starting to look at it and thinking, you know what, I could do this for myself. Rather than work for a company. So there's definitely been a change over the last 5 years since I've been doing this.
Absolutely. One of the big aspects in this is training, right? Because when someone is associated with a company, usually they get the support of having to attend those trainings at a regular interval, refreshing. Well, we can always debate the quality of training later on, but training as a compliance, or training as to upskill you a little bit, is usually provided. What happens in a self-employed arena? How do people get to do that? And is your platform also providing that kind of one place, like you already mentioned about the finance side of the story, managing the schedule, the rota? It would be interesting to hear about the other aspects, like training, professional development, so on and so forth.
So we tend to do our annual refresher training. A lot of us use certain online platforms for that. There's several companies out there that offer either e-learning annual refresher training, or also in-person one-day courses. They're not really that expensive. Usually under £100 to do a one-day refresher in-person course. So that's what we tend to do, because it's important to us, and in part for our insurance as well. Because obviously we have to have specialist carer business insurance. There's several companies out there that offer this, and if we were to put a claim in, the first thing they're going to ask is your training up to date? So that even though self-employed carers that are unregulated, that there is some form of regulation, it's not completely. So in terms of accessing training through our app, it's not something that we offer, but we're very keen to create partnerships with those organisations that do, because at the end of the day, where I see it is, we all want the same thing. We all want to support carers, but just all coming from slightly different angles. So is it worth us putting that training in place to duplicate what others are doing, or to work together?
Collaborate.
Yes. So we're thinking about this at the minute, which, but when people do come to us, because we do get asked a lot of questions around, accessing training and things, so we signpost to, we're given options of e-learning or in-person training they can access as a self-employed carer.
That's great.
Yeah, and obviously Sangha is the first to point out a really, really great feature request. So I like that, Sangha. Let's keep it there.
Thank you. I always do that, isn't it?
There's always things that you can want, and you should see the backlog of Sequoia. It's quite long.
Yeah, but that's interesting. So just so that I know, and I'm still learning, okay, I'm a student of social care. I have been whole life, I think, now. So you mean to say the self-employed people, they don't need to get approvals from CQC to offer care services? How does that work?
No, unfortunately, it's something that's debated quite a lot amongst the self-employed community, but we don't require to register with CQC, because we're individuals carrying out care. That only if we employ other carers are we then required to do that. So again, it's something that a lot of self-employed carers would like to see, and I've been made aware of a potential care register, that voluntary one, which I think would be excellent, and I think a lot of self-employed carers would really get behind that, because it's a bit of a double-edged sword, really, because we've not been regulated. It sort of puts a bit of, are we professional? And this is why, again, the creation of the apps and things like this is say, yes, we are professional. We're doing everything what the care companies are doing. We're keeping the same records, monitoring the same situations, but we're just doing it for ourselves rather than as a whole. Yes, I think as the numbers grow as well, and I think eventually regulation will come, but how long that will be and what it would look like at the moment, I really have no idea.
There's so many things I'm interested in hearing about, and obviously, like from a understand your company perspective, I want to know two things. The first thing is obviously I understand why you became a self-employed carer, but then I'm really interested in the problem that you're then slowly discovering, all the things that you're seeing in your everyday work life that you think, oh, this should be better, let's go more into that, let's understand all the things that eventually became your ideas and conceptualization of Pocket Carer. What were the worst things you were experiencing?
To be honest, a lot of it was more to do around the business management tools, because I was using different apps for trying to log my income and expenditure, for invoicing. And I've had this conversation before with people where I'm not an organised person. I mean, in terms of keeping my client files and things, I am, but in my own day-to-day living, and I'm not a person that thrives off of Excel spreadsheets, because that's how a lot of carers are managing. They're either still jotting things down in pen and paper, or they're creating spreadsheets to manage their income and expenditure, or the alternative is all these apps that you never end up using but paying all these multiple subscriptions for. And again, looking at the paperwork side and thinking, sat there filling things out constantly, thinking, oh, this could be so much easier in an app. And then thinking, well, you know what? How many apps am I paying for and using that I don't actually really use that well? Wouldn't it be better just to have it all in one? And a lot of the features we have in there, like the income and expenditure, they're so simple and basic to use, because for people like me that don't get on with, all this fancy accounting technology that don't really need, to be honest. We just need to log income, expenditure, and take a picture of a receipt, and it's all stored within the app. And then when it comes time for self-assessment, it can just be downloaded into a PDF document, and you can do your self-assessment or pass it along to your accountant to do, to make it as simple as possible.
And for $7.95, is it per month? Come on,
$7.99 a month.
It's a bargain. It's a bargain. I can't believe that, because you're so right. I mean, setting up a business, and we'll hear more about that, of course. But setting up a business is so difficult with all the things you don't know, because you've of course got your expertise somewhere else. So it's quite crazy that for $7.99 per month you get all of this. So what was the conception then of the business side? Because that's all the ideas and the pains you're experiencing. Then who do you meet? Where does this become a business?
To be honest, again, it's never really been planned out, if you like. It was basically the start of lockdown. I've been thinking about it for a while, and when the very first lockdown in March 2020, it gave a lot of us time to really think about things, and I started plotting out a project spec, which, being absolutely honest, looking back now, was completely embarrassing. It was terrible. But I've really learned over the last 2 years, because I'm not from a business background. I'm not from a tech background. I've been a carer, basically. So, yes, I put the spec together, and just got in touch with a few developers, had a lot of trial and error. I worked for the first year with somebody and ended up with nothing, unfortunately. The following year had to start from scratch, completely from scratch. But I learned so much from that first year. So my second, next project specs was so much better. The user journey was really thought out, thinking how everything would interact, what I would like to see in there. And then I was quite lucky. I roped in family members. My cousin's daughter is a very good designer, so she helped me design how all the features, how we wanted it to look. We've got risk assessments. How can we convert this into an app format, make it easy to use, it looks good, has all the information. And then I worked with an outsourced development team, and we worked together through the spec, and it took us about a year to build it in total, once we've gone through all those phases.
Wow.
That's so inspiring. And these are the stories we want our sector to hear and know. This is so inspiring because you said something there, you didn't have a tech background, you didn't have a business background, but the passion that you had for the sector and solving problem is what we need, right? And so well done. And I'm so glad you didn't give up after the first year and then you pushed on. And that's what businesses, and Morten and I, we can vouch on that so much.
Absolutely. I really, it's stories like this that make me feel so belonging to this sector and to you right now, of course, 'cause I think I know what you've been through and how hard that has been, but also how rewarding it is when you see it happening. And then talking a bit about then what's it all good for? Obviously, there's the business side of things, but there's also what I believe, at least, I think is something that you can do as a self-employed carer. There's that continuity of care, because obviously, if you're just one person, you can't see hundreds of people. You'll probably build up a very close catalogue of people that you see, and you have your tours and you get to know people better, or am I totally wrong?
No, I mean, that's right, because for me personally, the last few years, I do tend to do a lot of relief care. So a lot of the people I work with have regular carers, and I cover their breaks. So again, you get to build up your clients, that they get used to you, and you get to build up your contacts as well through other carers when you're covering for their breaks, and then they will recommend you to other ones. Oh, well, I know Emma, she's really good. My client really liked her if you needed to cover your break. And it sort of builds like that, really. A lot of, but no, you are right in that it's continuity for both sides, really, for the care clients as well. Because, they do want to build relationships. Care is such a personal thing, especially, going into people's homes. They not only want the control of who's coming in, but they want to build a long relationship. The families tend to do as well. And, because especially living is such a strange one, because you do generally become part of the family in some respects, because, you're there all the time, and,
it can be quite unique. I mean, obviously it can be in all care, but I'm hearing you say that can be quite unique, and I think I really do agree. And then what's the traction like now? Now we're back to the business thing.
Right. So we launched in February, but we've only done sort of a soft launch, really, because this is the first version of the app. So we're getting it out there. We've got we've got a core number of users on there that are paying, that have, and we've retained them. They've been subscribing for a few months now, which is really good. And they're very good at giving us feedback as well. And this is what we wanted. We didn't want to go out too soon and then have lots of complaints. This isn't working. That's not how we thought. So it's, really making us look at each of the features within the apps, what needs refining and what's missing. And we're going to have some exciting updates come in the next couple of weeks, for requests where people think, oh, what would be great, Emma, if we could have, for example, we've got a Teams feature coming. Because a lot of self-employed carers now are sort of forming themselves into teams to help cover if they're off sick and so on. So well, it'd be really great if we could, add a team within the app. So we've all got access to handover notes, and so any information we need to know. So that will be available hopefully from next week. And it's going to be free for our current subscribers up until November. So again, just trialing it, seeing how it works. Is there any improvements that need doing? So we can work on that before the big launch, hopefully in November.
That's awesome. So if I can ask you, Emma the tech entrepreneur or Emma the carer at heart?
I have to say, at the minute, I'm still getting to grips with this. I'm not quite sure. When I set out to do this, it was I just wanted to create an app for carers to make our lives easier. And it was only recently I realised I was actually building a software company. It was never an intention. I never set out with this thinking, I want to build a software company. I just really wanted to build an app that helps people, helps me, and helps others in similar carers like me. So yes, I'm not quite sure on that. Maybe you'll have to have me back on in a couple of months and ask again.
Sure, we will bring you back and we'll ask you that question again.
Emma, it was fantastic to have you on Tech Care, and Sanga, we really wish you, Emma, all the best with Pocket Care, and we'll make sure to have a link in the show notes so everybody can go and have a look at what you're doing. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and share your favorite Take Care podcast with your friends and colleagues. Until we meet next week, take care.